Hi everyone. Today I wanted to talk about error handling. It's such a crucial part of proper development, and a lot of times it's something that is, I guess, overlooked by new developers and even some experienced developers. I've taken over some projects with some shocking error handling. So I just wanted to go over error handling, and I'm going to be specifically concentrating on the on error go to, which is the most common form in most procedures. And I'll probably do another video at another date to cover the, I guess, less common, resume next, things like that. So let's dive into it. I don't want to get too bogged down in technical terms right at the beginning here. Let's just start off by looking at what does Microsoft do by default? Well, let's come here. I have a demo here, just a database. And we're just going to create a function. And we'll call it test. And we're going to do error raise 9. So error raise causes error, and 9 is the error it's going to raise. It's going to cause error number 9. Could be any of the other numbers we want. Really doesn't make a difference. I just took 9 arbitrarily here. So what we're going to do, we're going to put a message box after that. Hello world. Okay. So what we've effectually done here is we created a simple function that's causing an error, and then it would create a message box. So what happens if we run this just as is? You get runtime error subscript out of range. Okay. So we have an error, and in VBA, then you'd press end or debug depending on what you're wanting to do. If you debug, it brings you to what caused the problem, and you can go from there. But in reality, if this was in an application behind a form or a report or whatever, you don't want that type of pop-up happening to your user. You don't want them getting this. You don't want them having options to go into your VBA code and mess around. Obviously, if we're dealing with runtime environments, you're a little safer on that front. They can't go into VBA code. But regardless, we should always be aiming to have the best code possible in avoiding these issues in all scenarios. So we're getting into error handling. We want to tell the program, we want to tell the function how it should manage errors and not rely on, are we in a runtime environment? Is our user going to be respectful enough not to go into debug mode and mess up my code? These types of things. This is why we use error handling. So let's look at our first case of what is it that Microsoft offers us. So to show you Microsoft's error handler, we're just going to create a bogus macro. Message box. We'll do a hello world there as well. We have to save it first. Macro 1 is fine. Once it's saved, then we can use the convert macro to Visual Basic. So we're going to let it convert our macro into a Visual Basic function. And it's created a new module, and it always names it after the macro. And it's created this macro. And if we run it, it's going to do exactly what we had originally designed our macro to do. It's going to pop up a message box. Here's our message box. So it's working properly. Now, we want to break it on purpose. We want to see Microsoft's error handler. So we're going to do the same thing. Error.raise, number 9 is fine. And we're going to run it. So this is Microsoft's error handler, subscript out of range. Now, imagine you're in a big application. You've got dozens and dozens of forms and reports. You've got dozens of modules, tens of thousands of lines of code. And your user was in a form, punched in some number in some box, and boom, this happened. And he takes a screenshot of this. And he tells you, I don't know what happened. I got this error. You need to fix it. Well, this doesn't help you much. You don't know where he was. You don't know what he executed, which function, you don't know anything beyond, okay, a subscript out of range error occurred. But why? Where? How come? And now you're reliant on him to be able to tell you, well, I was in this text box, I did this action, and then it happened. And then you've got to go into the code behind that text box, assuming your user remembered correctly, and start looking into the code. And did that code call other functions? And you get into this turning in circles, running around after your own tail, trying to figure out what triggered the error. Well, there has to be a better way. And yes, there is. Microsoft's error handler is very simple, very, very basic. If you look at it, it starts off here at the very top. On error, it says go to this line. So it's telling it when an error occurs, wherever it is, jump over everything else, ignore absolutely every other line, and come down to this line. Then keep running. Well, then it says message box with the error. And then it says resume by going to this line. So it's going to jump back up, and then it exits. That's all it is. So we're coming down, we hit an error, we come here, we display a message box, we jump back up here, and we exit nicely. It's just too basic. And Microsoft could have done a lot more. We're going to do a lot more. We're going to do it properly. I want to point out one other thing about Microsoft's error handler that I see all over the internet on many projects I've taken over is if you look at it, they've named everything after the name of the procedure, macro 1. Macro 1, macro 1, macro 1, macro 1 is everywhere. Now what happens if I take this function and I want to duplicate it? I want to do another procedure that's very similar. So I'm just going to copy it. And we're going to call it macro 2. And then we're going to come here, hello world. Again, obviously this is bogus, but it happens a lot in coding that you're going to take one thing, copy it again, and just make a small tweak perhaps. And then all of a sudden, oh, wait a second, that isn't it. I need to now come and edit here. I need to edit here, and I need to edit here, and I need to edit here, because otherwise it's going to seem something's off. Why am I referencing macro 1 and macro 2? And it's just confusing. So you got to do these types of things to clean up. And this is why I'm telling you, it is a bad idea to have error handling and other components named after the procedure in which they're occurring. It's just bad programming practices. Don't do it. Save yourself the hassle, save yourself some time. That being said, let's look at our first step towards improving our error handling. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm getting rid of Microsoft's, and I'm going to call it crap because it really is. It's just way too basic and they should have done much more. So let's put in place a generic error handler. Well, the generic error handler is going to start off similarly, but in a generic manner, where we're going to do the on error go to, but now we're going to tell it just go to the error handler, not macro 1. Well, no, just go to the error handler. And then what does that sequence look like? Well, the sequence for that then becomes something more like this. So on error, go to the error handler. We're coming here. We're going to display a message box, and then we resume, and not resume to macro 1 exit. No, resume to error handler exit. So it's going to jump up here, error handler exit, on error, and then exit procedure type. Okay. So, and if you look down here in the message box, I also had procedure name. So we're going to replace these to complete the task. So exit procedure type. Well, the procedure type in this case is a function. We're going to exit function. Could also be sub or other things like that. And the procedure name, this is where I'm going to give it more pertinent information, macro 1. So if you look, I've now simplified the error handler so there's only one location where I'm referencing the name now. So if I copy this, I only have one place that I need to update instead of what was it, 4 or 5. So what does my message box look like? Well, my message box has multiple components to it. We're giving the source. We're telling it it's this procedure that caused the problem specifically. We're giving you the exact error number, and we're giving you the description. So what does that look like? Let's run it. Now we're getting somewhere. We're starting to get somewhere. So we now know, okay, well, this error specifically happened in this, in our case, function, or this procedure. Error number 9, if ever you want to look it up further, and here's the information, the description of it. Okay, we're a step in the right direction. But what happens in the case that I have macro 1 somewhere else in my database? and somewhere else in my database. And this happens. I've taken over projects like this. It's bad programming. I don't recommend you having the same name in different modules, but it does happen. So how do we handle that? We need to be able to take it to the next level. And to do that, what I usually do is I will add in another component to the source. I will also add in the module name. So this is normally where I would come here. I would copy the module name and I would paste it here. So now if we run it, I now know specifically in this module, this procedure caused this error. Now we're getting somewhere. We're starting to get somewhere. It was in another procedure, an after update event, let's say, that called this other function. It's going to tell me that function. It's not going to tell me it was the after update if I've done my job properly. So this helps us narrow it down very quickly. We're starting to get somewhere. The next thing, and to illustrate this a little bit better, I'm going to change our code. And let's replace it with a more realistic example. Okay? So normally we might have some code like this, where we're setting a variable for a database, we're opening a record set, we're looping through it, and then we're cleaning up after ourselves and we're leaving. So how do we integrate this into what we've learned so far? Well, the whole point of this second section up until now hasn't really served much. Why didn't we just put exit function down here? You know? Well, that's why. The reason is quite simple. We want to be able to use this as our cleanup. So this part of my code, my cleanup part of the code, I would normally come and put here. Why is that? Well, the why of that is quite simple. Let's assume this procedure runs properly. No problems. It's going to come through here, it's going to run, and it's actually going to keep running even through this, and then it's going to exit the function. So it never sees this message box. It's just going to run smoothly, it's going to perform the cleanup, and then exit. Now let's say an error occurs here, for whatever reason. Now what's going to happen is it's going to come here, hit an error, jump down to here, do the message box, then it jumps back up here, and it's still going to run my cleanup. So this is where you can put what needs to occur regardless if it runs smoothly or an error. This is my cleanup area. Let's come here and to avoid certain issues right now, let's just create a table design. I'm going to do contact ID. We're going to add an auto number. Make it a primary key. That's all fine. You don't use none. And just call it contacts. Okay? So at least we have a table. So if we run it right now, right? This should open. This should all run smoothly. And it ran smoothly. No problems. Let's come here now. Do our error raise. And do number 9 again. And run it. We've got our standard message box that we just designed previously with the same information. Okay. But wouldn't it be nice in a long procedure like this if we knew where in the procedure it happened? I have procedures with hundreds of lines of code, and being able to narrow down which line caused the problem is a tremendous aid to me. Well, we're lucky. VBA offers us that ability. If we come and we add one line. So I'm going to modify the description. We're going to add now, we have our description, but now I'm adding in this. Line number, ERL. ERL will be the line number. So let's just for right now, let's just come here. We're going to, for testing purposes, put in 20, 30, 40, okay? And let's run it again. We're still causing the error. What happens now? Now I get my line number. So now I know not only is it this module, this function, but it's this line specifically. I come here, my line 30 is my problem. Okay, we're almost all the way there. But I want to show you something. What happens in the case that we originally had where there were no line numbers and I have ERL? Well, if we run this, we're going to get 0. And I find 0, to me, I didn't want that popping up for my users. So what I did to solve the 0 from displaying is you can use a switch statement. And you can do something more along the lines of this. Now, if I run it, the line number doesn't show up because there is no line number to give. But if I put back my line number, 10, 20, 30, and I run it, my line number will show up. Okay, so the choice is yours. Actually, I shouldn't need this because I shouldn't need that extra line. As you saw, this is the way it should be. Sorry. So you add a switch, and you'll be able to now, if you run it, get the line number to show up. And if there are no line numbers, it's simply omitted. Okay, so we've done what we can to gather the most information about the source of the problem. Now, the next thing I wanted to discuss about error handling, as you saw, it's tedious to insert error handlers. It's tedious to enter line numbers. So there has to be a better way, and there is. There's a tool called MZ Tools. Any well-versed developer, I'm sure, has heard of it by now. And it's available online. It used to be free. Now you have to pay for the newer version. Well worth the investment. And you can access it at mztools.com. I have no affiliation, but I highly recommend it. You can download the trial if you want to take a look at it. Let me just show you what MZ Tools allows you to do. So I'm going to come into my add-ins and I'm going to activate it so then you can see the menu bars. Okay. And I'm going to just move this to increase my screen slightly. The first thing I wanted to show you is line numbers. Well, you have a button right here to insert line numbers. So you have your line numbers. Press enter, your line numbers are there. Oh, I don't want line numbers. Well, you just remove them. So in a click of a button, you can have line numbers in or out. Okay. The second thing I wanted to show you. Let's get rid of this one here again. Okay. And let's insert error handler. Now this is instantaneously it's inserted my basic error handler. I want to demonstrate to you one other aspect of this. And it's the simple fact that if you look at my error handler, I don't hard code the module name, because if I copy this to another database and another module or something like that, I don't want to have to do that type of updating. It's easy to, it's an easy oversight. So I instead make it a variable, and that variable I put at the top of my modules. So in all my modules, normally you'd see something like that. And then you just put the module name there, and it's automatically accurate here. So now, in one quick swoop, we'll add the line numbers, and I run this, I have my error handler all done. How hard was that? I clicked 2 buttons. I added my line number, and I inserted an error handler at 2 buttons. So this is just to illustrate to you some of what MZ Tools can do, because it can do far, far more than just that. Just a quick overview. You have a much more advanced find. Let's just say ERL. Let's search for ERL throughout the entire database. And as you can see, instead of showing you each instance one by one, like Microsoft does, they're all shown to you. And now all you have to do is double click to go to that location. And you can do multiple search panes. This module, search it, and they come up in different windows. Okay? So the search is far superior to anything Microsoft gives you. It has here the ability to insert headers. So let's say that I'm creating here. Well, when I put up my code online and things like that, I insert a header. So it will instantaneously, you create your template, and it will insert it for you, and it will put in the proper things at the proper places. And this is all configurable. You're in control of how you want your procedure headers to look. You can also insert, for instance, your module header. Module, insert, and there it is. It's doing it for all my modules now. And as you can see, it created the name of the module. It's a module. Who created it? It automatically inserted for me my smod name, a variable. So you can insert module headers. You can do indenting. You can do code cleanup. Code cleanup is really useful too. You can tell it to search a specific module, the entire project. You can tell it what to search for, dead code, line indenting, whatever you want. You see your options, spelling, and you just let it run through. And if it finds problems, it will list them for you. And like I say, you go into options, you can configure everything. So like I said, you can change your error handling, you can change your headers, you can create code blocks that you can just insert at the click of a button and things like that. So MZ tools, in my opinion, essential. The next thing we should cover is, okay, we've looked at basic error handling. Now this is great for Access Basics and Excel, Word, PowerPoint, things like that. But in Access, we're privileged. We can take it even further. Let's say we want to have a history of the errors. As a developer, I have a history table of errors. That allows me, when I go to see a client, to quickly log into the system and see a list of all the errors that have occurred since the last time I was there. So how do we do that? Well, in this case, I'm going to refer you to Alan Brown's website. So if we go on the internet, you can bring up Alan Brown's website on error handling. And he provides us with information on how to build a table and then a basic logging mechanism. And this basic logging mechanism you can certainly take further, but it's a great starting point. So the first thing is we have to create this table. So to save time, I've already created the table. So I'll just show you very quickly here the table, tlog error, and if you design view it, it's exactly as he has it on his website. Okay. So the next part of that, after you've created the table to log errors, is the actual function that he created. So he has a function here, function log error. You copy it all. And you come into your database. And what I like to do is I like to create a blank, and I'll call it mod errors. It's just my personal way, but you can name it, put it where you want, as long as it's in a standard module. And you put it in place and make sure everything compiles nicely. Okay, so now you've got the function, you got the table, you're ready to roll with it. You can start using it. How does it work? Well, it's just as simple as calling the function. So let's go back to our original code here. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the comment out button. And we're going to replace it now with our call of the function. So the function itself it's asking for the error number. So error number. The next thing it's asking for is the description. So error.description. The next thing it's asking for is the calling procedure. Well, that's going to be macro 1. And then parameters, if you have any. Do you want to display a message box stating this to the user, or do you just want this to be quietly logged but don't show anything to the user? Most often I want to show my users when there's a problem. And that would be the basics of it. So now if we run our error logger, we'll run our procedure. It's telling us error number 9, subscript out of range. And then if I come as the developer later on and I want to review things, I can now come here, error number 9. It tells me what day, when that happened. It tells me where it originated from. It tells me which user generated that error, because I've also had cases where the user was the issue. It was a permissions issue relating to files and folders. So sometimes having the username can be very useful. So this is Alan's basic setup. What I will tell you is over the years, and just based on what we've previously discussed, I've improved upon it a bit further. I log also the module name. I'm logging the line number now. And I also log the computer because what I've also found over the years is different computers have different setups, and sometimes the issue was the build number of Office and things like that. And you can log that as well. You can log the Windows setup, you can log the Office setup, etc., etc., etc. You could even take it further. You can add in an option here if you wanted, another Boolean, something like optional B send email as Boolean and equals false. And then you could do a simple thing down here. You could do something simple down here, and then at the end of it all, if bool, then, and if, and you add in here, do command dot send object and ... to create and generate your email and send that off to you as a developer, send you're aware. So just telling you, this is a great starting point, but I think it's still lacking a little bit of information. So I think there's room to improve upon it. At the very least, the module, the line number, those things can greatly help you. Beyond Alan's contributions, I also wanted to show you one last utility or add-in type style thing you can do here. And it was written by another one of the Access MVPs, the Smiley Coder. You may have seen him in different forums and things like that over the years. He created a really nifty error handling tool called the Access Crash Reporter. And I have an article on my website about it. And I have a link straight to his article where you can download it. But it allows you to gather the information. It also has the ability to take a screenshot when the error occurs. So then you can see on the form or the report, wherever the person is, what was entered in the field. It has the ability to send you email, etc., etc. You see the detail log that is an example of what can be generated by his tool. So it's just another utility you can quickly integrate into an existing solution and be up and running with some pretty advanced error handling tools at your disposition. So definitely something worth checking out. He put a lot of work into it, and it shows, and highly, highly recommended. So at the end of the day, I hope this helps you guys get started down the road of proper error handling. I'll probably be doing another video down the road going over a little bit more obscure things like on error resume next and things like that. But today really is the heart of the matter, what you should be doing in the vast majority of procedures. And I hope it helps you guys. Please leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought. Future ideas for videos. If you don't mind, leave me a like, subscribe. The more you guys do that, the more I'm able to do this and create more content. And please share with other people. Have a great day and take care and stay healthy.